Welcome everybody, my name is Ede Weireter and today's topic is the Mini Electric or Mini Electric, the Cooper SE and the Countryman SE, but I'll also give you an outlook in terms of the product substance. Well, the next 25 minutes we will talk about some details to make you guys also ready for being Mini Electric in 2030, and I'm sure you have a lot of electric products at home already. So generally we can say nothing is as powerful as an idea whose time has come. E-mobility is on its way, and Mini was the leading one. 2008, remember, if you were there, Mini was the one that was carrying the first experiences of people driving an electric car for BMW i, and the i3 was born in 2013. Well, you know, Mini goes electric, goes fully electric by 2030. So from now on, this is about 9 years. Speaking as a leasing user of cars, so 3 more cars, and then there's no alternative for any combustion engine at Mini brand. That is a perfect match, to be honest, because it's got an iconic design. No, not this one. This one, it's got the iconic design, and Mini has the go-kart feeling. And due to the electric battery, the center of gravity goes even lower. So actually, the driving performance of a Mini Electric is outstanding. You've checked it, I've checked it. So today we want to dig in electric technology. And for those of you who still believe that, you know, it will take some time, I just want to make it easy to dig into that by talking the first minutes about some basics. And once you understand the basics, it's very easy to do calculation and answer a lot of questions of customers, colleagues, whether it's BMW or Mini, it doesn't make any differences. Let's get started with this. There's a socket back home, 230 volts in general. I've taken a German example. I know there is a lot of home sockets existing around the globe, but 230 volts, okay, we know that. What does it actually mean? Volt, amperes, kilowatts and kilowatt hours. Let me take this example. You've got a tank, a tap and a bowl. So the water in the tank has a certain pressure, that's the volts, number 1. You can see if it's low or high, we've got low and high voltage. And everybody knows that electricity and the danger of it comes from the volts, for example, number 1. Number 2, the tap. So anything that flows to the tap can be thin tap or bigger tap. Actually, that's the amperes, that's the power of the electricity, actually, how strong it is. We do have, let's say, an example where the tap is small, bigger and very big on the graphics you can see, but in real life, we've got 1 phase or 3 phase. So we've got 3 taps, 1 tap or 3 taps, actually. And this is the wire that can be taken to charge a car, for example, or to drive electric motors and so on. So if you see the 2 cables down there, 1-phase cable is a standard cable back home, a 3-phase cable is a very strong one, can also be used for industrial engines or for high power charging. Now, we also must talk about the charging devices and the amperes that are limiting the power. For example, in Germany, standard fuses, they don't look like this anymore. That's a historic one, 10 amps. That's a standard one for household devices. 16 amps you only use for your washing machine or for your oven. If it's an electric oven in there, it gets a certain fuse, 16 amps, you can see that. And next to it, there's the charging devices. For example, a Countryman, Cooper Countryman SE charging device, standard cable, mode 2 cable, has the possible current between 6 and 10 amps. And next to it, there's a bigger cable. That's a 1 or 3-phase cable for public charging, which actually we know that this is a quicker charging process. I'll get back to the charging process in another episode in detail. But let's now talk about the work that is being done. So if we have the amount of water that runs out in a certain time is the kilowatts. So it starts with watts. 1 kilowatt is 1,000 watt. We know that. If you do bench press in a fitness club, for example, 100 kilos in 1 second up, which is a lot, then your performance, your work would be 1 kilowatt. If we're checking out electrical engines within the BMW group, there's a few examples. You see there's a rear axle electric motor on the Countryman SE. It's up to 70 kilowatts. Then there is the X3 xDrive 30e, where the electric motor is in the gearbox. It's actually not a single gear. There it drives the gearbox, and you physically have 8 electric gears running the whole show. Mini Cooper SE, next to me, has a very powerful engine. In the UKL, in the small car class, 135 kilowatts is about the strongest electric motor all around. The Generation 5 drivetrains have come across with the iX3. It's got a rear-driven axle, 210 kilowatts of performance. Now, the usage of the energy, or how long you can do that, not just one time. So if you do this for 1 hour, the bench press with 100 kilos, then your work is 1 kilowatt hour. You've done this for an hour. And your meter back home is actually measuring how much energy you've used in the house. So together all of this, these are the basics we are dealing with. If you have a hair dryer, for example, that has 2 kilowatts, and you dry your hair for an hour, which nobody does, then you would use 2 kilowatt hours. We also must talk about money, because that's one thing, we all use that, but we are not interested in it. If it gets back to money, things become interesting for everybody. In Germany, for example, the household price for 1 kilowatt hour is 30 cents. That's very expensive. Check your prices in your countries right now. I'm sure there's a lot of countries that have almost half of it or somewhere in the middle. So 1 kilowatt hour, we say 30 cents at home. Public charging in Germany is between 30 cents and 80 cents. Ooh. So if we have a look at the battery of the Mini, the capacity is roughly 29 kilowatt hours. That's the capacity. So it could do 29 kilowatts for 1 hour. That's the performance, right? So let's check how much does a full charge cost. 29 kilowatt hours is the battery capacity if it's fully empty. Household charging, 30 cents, so it's roughly 9 euros for Germany. If you want to know how much is the cost per 100 kilometers, that's even more interesting. Maybe you're commuting 40, 50 kilometers a day, for example. Then the average consumption of the Mini is set to be between 15.2 and 17.6 per 100. Well, if you use music, if you have a Mini typical drive style, then you possibly are closer to the upper edge. Let's say 17 kilowatt hours is your consumption. Home charging, 30 cents. That's about roughly 5 euros per 100 kilometers if you charge at home. That's it. So you see, it's very easy to calculate with the basics and just check out how much are the costs for an electric product like the Mini per 100 kilometers. Now let's get into the design. I mean, the Minis have a specific design, no question about it. We can see the yellow stuff down here, the logos, the mirrors, the S. I mean, there's nothing new. I'm not bothering you with the stuff which is actually your profession, also on the insides. But sustainability comes into the place now, big time. So the company is dedicated to also follow up a certain process and be a very sustainable product for the future. For example, if you take the Mini Black Pearl upholstery, for example, it already uses a lot of recycled polyester on the inside. I can give you a lot of examples, but it's also nice to have an outlook to the future. By 2023, which is just in 2 years' time, Mini is about to stop using leather in the cars and in all lifestyle products. Well, once we're digging into the car, it has a very high standard equipment. LED headlamps, they're not using a lot of energy, for example. It's got an acoustic pedestrian protection sound generator, which is actually right down here. We've got a heat pump, which actually is trying to reuse some energy which is used for the heating or for the air conditioning back on. And we've got a bigger range, and it's got a charging devices for AC charging of 11 kilowatts and DC charging of 50 kilowatts. I want to take you below the surface and have a closer look in the car. The Mini is a conversion car. That means we've got an existing setup of the Mini, a steel chassis. And then we've added 4 major parts. On the rear end, you can see the charging socket. You see the battery underneath, which is a T-shaped function. And in the front, you see a massive electric motor. Well, it's not as big as it looks here, with 135 kilowatts. Actually, it's the one of the i3 S. And we've got a frame where everything is mounted. We'll have a closer look in a minute. Okay, first of all, the Mini itself, due to the battery, has let's say, a weight that is 145 kilos plus a Cooper S. It's not because of the electric motor. We'll have a look in a minute. It's more likely because of the battery. But the battery itself is flat down the floor. We'll have a more precise look later on as well. As the battery is a T-shaped function in there, the center of gravity is actually 3 centimeters lower. And that has a massive impact on the driving performance. Because the engine is so strong, the Mini needs a subframe to hold this engine in the car on the position where it's supposed to be. So next to me, you've a cut open Mini, and actually there is a big subframe in the front hosting everything together, which is the gearbox, the electric motor, charging devices, and all of it. By the orange cables, you can see this is the high voltage components. On the picture, you can see left and right as 2 yellow markers. Actually, these are the engine fixed points, very massive. But with that, we have a very stiff chassis in the front, and the Mini and the engine, because it's so strong, is actually also using a technology that has been invented for the i3, ARB, which is Aktornahe Radschluftbegrenzung. That's a German word. It's terrible. Don't even try to translate it. But actually what it does, it's a traction control. It's about 10 times faster than any standard DSC we used to have before. So with that, the Mini has a precise road holding, even under wet conditions and flat out driving pleasure, for example. A lot of people ask, are electric cars safe at all? I mean, we see the chassis, we see everything in the front, but they believe that, you know, electric vehicles could be more dangerous in case of an accident. Number one, the Mini protects everything in the best possible way. The battery is underneath, in the middle, the safest part of the car. The front end has got the subframes for the electrical parts, as you can see next to me on that chassis. So for every situation, like any crash tests that's supposed the Mini actually needs to run through it, the Mini has done everything with excellence. So we can say, as the car fulfills all the crash safety requirements than any other Mini or BMW within the company, there is no higher risk of an electric vehicle. Production. Sometime we want to know, where is it all made of? Well, the electric motor of the i3 and the Mini is made in Landshut, which is next to Munich. Made in Bavaria, made in Germany, for example. And that is the one unit which is fully automatic built. It's really made by BMW electric motor, number one. The battery, for example, also here comes in a T-shape function or below the car. It's got 12 modules. And this Mini next to me, you won't actually see it in detail, but it's slightly higher than a standard Mini, 18 millimeters, due to the sufficient ground clearance needed by that battery. The warranty is 8 years and 100,000 kilometers, and is a battery certificate everybody gets in case you purchase the Mini. Now we're talking about sustainable stuff. You know, electrical components are using lithium, cobalt, rare earth, and other stuff in this. The BMW Group on the Gen 5 drivetrains from iX3 onwards, they do not use rare earth materials for the electric motors at all. Currently, the digging is going on, and you need to have neodymium and other than that to be available for getting the magnets on the electric motor. By the way, rare earths, they are called rare earths, but they're more often on the planet than gold or other than that. That is just a saying from ancient times. When it comes to the battery materials where you need a lot of lithium and a lot of cobalt, BMW has started to buy the raw materials in, let's say, in a responsible mining. So actually only supporting mines where working conditions are appropriate. And then the rare materials are delivered to the two manufacturers, CATL and Samsung. So also on this side, the highest standards in terms of sustainability have been taken over. Well, now coming to the operation. I don't know how often you get a chance to drive it, but you know, the multifunctional display is different. We get artificial sound when we start up the car. There's no engine sound, there is no shift points. And on that picture you can see basic information is always on display. On the left side you can see the power usage, or if you decrease the power and take your foot off, if you recuperate, if you charge your battery. Every electrical motor can be a motor if you put in energy. If you take your foot off, it can be a generator, and that's the recuperation process. And on the other hand, on the other side, you can see the battery SOC, state of charge, where you can actually see how much and how high is the level of electricity in your high voltage battery. On the top is the one everybody has a look all times, the range. If you drive hard for a short time, the range collapses in some certain stage. And then if you go smooth and eco-friendly driving, it's growing in terms of kilometer. It always gives you a prediction of what's going on. The latest products have an algorithm where it doesn't happen too much that the range collapses and pops up again. So the prediction is quite well balanced to your consumption at your current driving state. In the Mini SE, but we'll jump in on the next episode and check it all out in detail, there is a lever where you can select 2 levels of recuperation. Recuperation is you take your foot off and the electric engine is actually driven as a generator and has a very strong brake momentum. The standard one is on high, which is actually the level of a BMW i3, like a one pedal feeling. And then you can decrease this to about half of it, and then you would have the same driving behavior than on a Countryman PHEV. So it makes sense to use the decreased one out of town, country roads, because it's rather better to have a sailing car than to have a very strong recuperation at all times. On the right side, you can find the driving modes. And this is the one where you can actually select how is your Mini giving you the feedback. Do you put it into a sporty output? You got a firm steering behavior, or you go the opposite. Green plus is like the surviving mode of Mini. Everything's cut off, even the light goes halfway down, but still on the official needed strength. The heating is off. If you're in winter, it's gonna get cold, but you squeeze out the very last kilometers of range if you need it to somehow limp or get home. Well, I'm getting to the finish. The production of Mini is half English and half German, I would say. So the battery, the high voltage battery, the motor, powertrain assembly, it all comes around Munich, which is in Dingolfing and Landshut, BMW plants, huge ones. And the Mini itself is being produced, the pressing is in Swindon, and the assembly is in Oxford. And they have done a lot of fully automatic setups. For example, the battery production down here near Munich is fully automatic and is supposed to have more than 1.2 million modules will be produced within 2019 to 2023. So you see a massive layout of electromobility for the future, and Mini is ready for it. So to sum it all up, what a nice go-kart feeling the electric Mini has. The design was outstanding ever since. The torque is instantly coming with that very, very strong electrical motor in the front. And it's the perfect car for urban conditions. The range is up to 234 kilometers, WLTP. Obviously, you can decrease that by having a big smile in your face. And Mini still has a look on the sustainable side of electromobility. Thanks for watching episode 1. Episode 2, I will talk about charging details and charging basics. See you there.